So, where was he born? Where did he grow up?
Jim was born in Salt Lake City. He grew up, I think his first house that they lived in was on a place called Ramona Avenue in Salt Lake.
Mm-hmm.
And then his dad bought a big house on the corner of 10th East and Harvard Avenue.
Okay.
And he lived there until he went in the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
And he served in the Marines for 2 years. He was only 17 then. They won't let you in the Marines until you're 18. Mm-hmm. So then on the 21st of June, he went into the Marines with his best friend, Ben Hathaway.
Cool.
And so he was on an airplane carrier, the USS Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
He was a gunner.
Oh.
And he shot down the kamikazes. Do you know what kamikazes are?
Mm-hmm.
The suicide planes, the Japanese, and one landed on their deck. And he saw one of his buddies burn alive.
Oh.
Anyway, it caused a lot of destruction on the ship. So they all got a 30-day leave, came back to Bremerton, Washington, where the ship was going to be repaired. And so on that leave, he came home and met me. Actually, in high school, I didn't know him, but evidently he was a big basketball star because he was all city. But I wasn't particularly into sports, and so I didn't know him that well. So, but he and my sister dated a couple of times, and then they started writing to each other. And she sent him a picture of me in my bathing suit. And you know those little snapshots and way far out on the lawn? You couldn't really tell it wasn't her because we both had long dark hair. So anyway, she said it was her. And the reason she didn't want a picture of her is because she was so thin, she thought she was too skinny in a bathing suit. Now, you can't be too skinny. Anyway, so she sent a picture of me, and he didn't know that until she got married. And so she wrote to him and said she'd gotten married. But that picture I sent to you was my little sister. So he started writing to me, and then that kamikaze hit the deck of the plane, and he came home for 30 days. He came up to see me on the first day of his leave, and he asked me if I'd go out with him 30 nights in a row. Awesome. He denies that, but he did say that.
Awesome.
And we almost did go out that much. Then he barely got back to the ship, and the war was over. Yeah, so he came back and went up to the U, and the coach hired him right away to be on the basketball team because he had watched him in high school. And he told him when he graduated from high school, he wanted him on the team. Mm-hmm. So he and Ben both went up there together, and Ben didn't make it, but he wanted Jim. So then we went together for about 2 years, and then we got married and had 3 wonderful kids. Mm-hmm. And he was quite an athlete, honey. He excelled at every sport he tried. Mm-hmm. I remember one of the people in our ward was really a good tennis player, and Jim had really never played tennis. But he challenged him, and Jim beat him. Just his sheer strength and coordination. Mm-hmm. And so every sport, I was an athlete's widow. I was really a widow. He played every sport. He was state handball champ. Wow. He was on a volleyball team. He was on a baseball team. And all this time, I had 2 babies a year apart. And he was gone. Besides working, he was gone at night doing all these sports. And if he told them no, they'd call me and say, if you'll let him play on our team, we'll give you the trophy when we win. I said, oh, big deal. I've got a whole room full of trophies. I want my husband. Anyway, but we had Jimmy and Jamie were 13 months apart, and then 6 years later, after Jamie, we had Chris. And they've both been very successful in their work. And anyway, Jim really loved sugar,
Right.
like I do, like we all do.
Right.
But anyway, he used to buy these great big chunks of chocolate. Were you old enough to remember that? He'd had them down back in the basement, in the fruit room, and then he'd have an ice pick. And the grandkids all knew where it was, and so they'd run downstairs and get the ice pick and get a chunk of chocolate.
Awesome.
And when he was growing up, he and Ben would go into this shop, and the girls would think they were pretty cute, so they'd give them the donuts free. And they'd buy all these candy bars and go sit in the Tower Theater and eat these candy bars. Anyway, as a result of all this, he became diabetic. And that wasn't good, because he had it for years and suffered with many different health problems because of it. But it didn't hold him down. And then my dad built us our first home, and we lived in it for 25 years. And he finished the basement, and he loved to work with wood and with his hands.
Right.
He could fix anything.
Yeah.
He could do anything. In fact, he bought an old car once. It was an old Austin Healey from England, and it was old, and it didn't run. But he put it all together and made it run.
Wow.
Oh, and before we got married, he wanted a car, and this guy told him that first of all, he went and bought some skis at Allied Surplus. It's where all the surplus from the war went, and they sold it to the public. And they had some skis, and he bought them for $6.
Wow.
And so this man said, if you'll give me those skis, I've got a car stuck in the snow way up in the top of some canyon, Little Cottonwood. And so he hiked up in the snow with a new battery, put it in this car, and got it down the mountain.
Wow.
And it was a Model A Ford, and that's what we drove in when we first got married.
Awesome.
And I was so embarrassed, because it was a little town then, and you knew everybody. And right now, a Model A Ford, it was a convertible, coupe, not a convertible, but it had a rumble seat in the back. It was so cute. Now it would be worth a lot, and it'd be a novelty. But then it was just embarrassing. You know, you couldn't buy a new car. You couldn't afford one anyway. A new car, everything went to the war effort.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, that's what we drove for a while, and then he bought that Austin Healey and fixed that up, and he drove that for a while. I didn't have a car for years, and so I was just home with my kids, and I loved it. I loved being a mother, but I could have stood more of him coming home at night. And my kids kind of suffered from it too. But anyway, as a result of all that sugar and that diabetes, one day he cut his toe, and right away it got infected, and he lost his leg. So after that, he couldn't do his sports anymore, but he said, you know what? I've had a wonderful life, and I've done everything I've wanted to do, and I was good at everything. So he said, I'm not sorry. And I took care of him for 7 years before he passed away. He went to a lot of different doctors and a lot of different hospitals and a lot of different rehabs. And anyway, I was happy to drive him around and do it for him. But that's just about the story of his life, honey. And we really had 2 wonderful sons and a wonderful daughter. That's the end of his story.